Happy Monday afternoon. As we talk, Ruben Amorim comes under fire not only by the media but through the Manchester United fan base as well. I have gone online and I've seen so many people calling for Ruben Amorim to change his system, change his formation, even talking about whether he might be, is he the right guy for Manchester United? Should he have been brought in when he was? And even talks online about Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, we never should have got rid of him, and kind of that revisionism over the old managers. And I kind of want to put that to bed, talk about the circumstance that Ruben Amorim is in, what he's walked into at this club and how we help him get the best out of Manchester United. And it's not with this current squad. There's some scary numbers coming out around certain squad members of this team, but also what has the club done to help the younger players? What has the club done to help Ruben Amorim? And it is basically little to nothing. Antony, sale talks begin. Real Betis want to start talks with Manchester United to get Antony in on a permanent deal. The current face of La Liga, I mean, they talk about Mbappe, they talk about Vinny Jr. Antony is ripping it up in La Liga, and apparently Real Betis want to sweep in with an offer before his price might be out of reach for them. Also, some talks over a keeper from Serie A, a really good keeper as well. Would you want him at Manchester United? Is it possible? Andre Nana wishes to stay. I know Goldwich covered it a little bit on the morning show, but more news on a new keeper that Manchester United are scouting, and some stuff that Ruben Amorim has spoken about regarding Chido Obi and Aiden Heaven, some bright futures at Manchester United, and that's one of the positives we can take out of yesterday's game. Also have Sam and Maud's calling in from Old Trafford with a little Amorim update as well, so stay tuned for that. But let's get straight into the actual transfer news, and then I'll bring in Ruben Amorim, because as you can see, the title is Amorim under fire, and what now? Where do we go from here? Because how many times are we going to blame the manager, throw a manager under the bus, and do the same cycle over and over and over? I mean, the fuse with certain managers has got smaller over the years, and the amount of patience has gotten smaller. But wow, I really didn't think we'd see not even a full season for Ruben Amorim, and people are already calling for him to potentially lose his job and bring someone else in. Like, I can't even wrap my head around it. How can we still be blaming the manager at this point in time? The club just keeps going backwards and backwards and backwards, and it keeps falling and falling and falling. And somehow people come to the conclusion, oh, well, it must be the manager. Of course you can criticise the manager. There's criticisms I could lay out there for Ruben Amorim. He has shown little hope so far in his Manchester United tenure. Let's be honest, he's shown little hope. The results have been awful, the performances have been awful, but when do you actually look at the club and say, why a successful manager's come into this club and failing over and over and over? And we're going to talk about it. But the transfer news with Antony. So he's coming in that Real Betis are looking to open talks with Manchester United in the coming days over a permanent deal for Antony. Betis is set to offer 20 to 25 million euros, but United want at least 40 to 50 million euros. Ineos believe they can collect a bigger figure thanks to the player's impressive displays as of late at Real Betis. He's attracted interest from Juventus as well as two clubs from the Saudi Pro League. Hence, Real Betis risk being priced out. United are delighted with Antony's exploits, which have given them more leverage. So while Real Betis are set to table an offer of 20 to 25 million euros, Manchester United are set to hold out for at least 40 to 50 million euros. Well, I think you can keep dreaming on the 40 to 50 million euros from Manchester United. There's no way we get 40 to 50 million euros for Antony. I mean, I would love to, and you never know, if he keeps ripping it up in La Liga, you might get closer to that. I mean, so far for Real Betis, 5 matches, 2 goals, 2 assists, and 3 man of the matches. So he is tearing it up. I mean, I keep hearing Rashford this, Rashford that. We let our best player go to Aston Villa, and don't get me wrong, Rashford's looking a lot better for Aston Villa, and he's playing well, and I'm happy for him, and I hope he does do well. But the real star of the show is Antony at the minute, in terms of our loan players. Antony's absolutely killing it over at Real Betis. And the fans absolutely love him. He's wearing the number 7 shirt. You know, he's been spoken about in La Liga. So Manchester United are very happy with how this loan is going. I do think clubs will be interested in Antony. I think people forget he's still only 24 years old. He has obviously got stuff to offer. Maybe he's not suited to the Premier League. That's an argument that people have put forward. I just don't think we're a good environment for many players to come into. Most signings that we make flop, and it goes on a bigger scale, and there's more eyes on you if you overpay and you pay 80 million, which is what we did for Antony. So I think Antony was made into a bit of a scapegoat. He was obviously nowhere near good enough. He was nowhere near 80 million. He should have done more at the club. There's no excuses for that. But we could recoup some money for him. The only issue is, in terms of amortisation and his book value, you've got to sell him for at least, I was looking at 28 million to kind of break even on this. Are we going to get 28 million for Antony? Well, it depends if he continues to play the way he is for Real Betis, but I still highly doubt it. Even if he scored and assisted every single game from now until the end of the season, it's going to be tough. You've got to remember the wages on as well. Not many people can afford 200 grand a week in wages, and that's what Antony's on at Manchester United. So Real Betis, we know their affordability, and they probably are going to want to go and get him 20 to 25 million euros. You're looking at around probably 20 million pounds eventually when you've done your negotiation. Would you accept that for Antony? It's under the amortisation fee and his book value, so you're going to still lose money on him. So when people look at Antony smashing it for Real Betis, of course it's good for us. Of course it's good in the long term in terms of people coming in and offering us money for Antony, and we've got little money in the summer to spend on transfers. So as much as we can get off the books in wages, his wages would be great to get off the books, and to get players out that aren't going to have a future here. It's great in that sense, but also we're not actually going to get that much money coming back into the transfer kitty for what we sell Antony for, unless we do manage to pull off something that nobody expected and he goes for more than 28 million pounds-ish. It's just not going to happen. So you're not going to get that much money back for him, apart from the wages that you will save. So Rashford is the one you really want to look at. If you get 40 million for Rashford, it's pure profit on FFP because he's come through the academy. That's going to go straight into our transfer kitty. Jadon Sancho, the amount of time he's been at the club and getting 25 million for him, getting 300 grand a week off the books in wages, that's going to help us out in terms of FFP. Of course it will. So there is players that we can sell that are going to help us out in FFP, but Antony, you'd have to get a really good price for him for it to make a dent in terms of giving us a boost for the transfer window. But get in the comments down below. Would you want to sell Antony? Do you think we'll get a sale for Antony? Do you think we should have kept Antony? Why is it that every player goes away and does really well when they're not at Manchester United, but when they're at Manchester United, they look like a flop, they look like a failure? I do think in La Liga you get more space and time on the ball. Real Betis probably play at a quicker pace, and let's be absolutely real about it, they have better players than we do. It's a better environment. I said it on the fans forum last night. You are the product of your environment. The pressure, the culture, everything at Manchester United feeds into a negative environment which gets the worst out of players. When have we last got the best out of a player? When have we got the best out of a player? Even Bruno Fernandes, who is holding this club up on his back, is literally carrying us on his back, is being brought down by this club. Like, every player that comes in gets brought down by the club. So it's a really tough environment for players to succeed in. When they go away from the club, a lot of players tend to do better. How is Antony's future going to pan out? And I think we have to capitalise on this opportunity of him doing well at Real Betis, get what we can in for him while he's doing well, and move on. It's not worked at Manchester United previously. If he comes back, I don't think it's going to work again. Get as much money as you can for him in. Be thankful that he's managed to go and prove his value, that the loan has worked out. This is what loans are for. And move on and invest it into somebody else, because we are desperate, in need of money coming in for the summer and getting better attacking players in. Patrick Lynch says, you can want a new manager, but at some point you will need to stick to one with a rebuild. We'll have to ask, why do managers and players come here and fail? The common factor is the ownership. And that is absolutely well said, Patrick, because let's talk about Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. I wanted to bring the Antony news in because it was a bit of transfer news, but I want to talk about not Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. I don't want to talk about Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. I'm going to bring him in as part of my argument. God, I was going back a few years there. Let's talk about Ruben Amorim, because so many people, when Ruben Amorim first walked through the doors of this football club, said, we cannot make the same mistakes again. We have to back the manager. We've got to allow him to remove the players that he needs to remove. We've got to give him time. We've got to allow him time to embed his system. Here we are, and I don't think anybody would have expected for it to go as bad as it has done. I don't think anybody expected the amount of losses that we've had. I don't think anybody expected the performances to actually potentially get worse. I mean, the performances were already bad. I would argue they might have got worse. And I don't think anybody would have expected for us to be as low as we are. But I am seeing now saying Amorim clearly isn't up for it. I'm seeing now people say Amorim clearly isn't up for it. Amorim needs to get the best out of his players. Amorim clearly doesn't know who his best players are because look how well Antony's doing at Betis, look how well Rashford's doing at Villa. And I'm just keep hearing different criticisms fired in at Ruben Amorim. I will say it again. He has been put into an absolute car crash. This is the worst Manchester United squad we have had in years. In years. It's one of the worst Manchester United teams ever. He said it himself. He kind of retracted it, but he said it himself. He has been given one signing, which is a left wing back. Aidan Heaven came in, yes, he got his debut yesterday, but that was more of a club signing for the future. He's been given one signing in Patrick Dorgu. Look at our attacking options in what we have. Look at the squad. Look at Fulham's bench yesterday compared to our bench. This squad is nowhere near the standard of a Manchester United squad. This squad is near, I genuinely think we'd be in the relegation zone if we didn't have Bruno Fernandes in this squad. That's where I think this squad is at. We have some players that are underperforming and could be doing better, international players, I get that. But this squad is not good and he's been thrust in to a car crash. His system doesn't suit the players. He's been given no support. He's tried to do what he thinks right behind the scenes is moving Antony out because he's not part of the future, moving Marcus Rashford out because of behaviour behind the scenes. Some people might come on the United stand and say differently, but I've said multiple times Marcus Rashford has the ability, he has the talent to be whatever he wants to be. I've seen him firsthand. Like I know how he can play. But if a player's attitude and behaviour isn't right behind the scenes, then that does need to be stamped out because it can affect other members of the squad. Ruben Amorim's made that tough decision earlier on while he has the power, and he's moved him on. Whether you agree with that, whether you don't, it needed to happen. If his behaviour wasn't right behind the scenes, it needed to happen. He has been dealt with injuries. He's had so much to deal with. And on top of that, he's then having to come out and front questions about the ownership, cutting jobs, making redundancies, cutting lunches, cutting food for staff. Like the amount of stuff that you've heard regarding the cost cutting that Ineos is doing behind the scenes. If you would have told people a couple of years ago, you would have thought it was satire. You would have thought it was a joke. Like he's had to deal with so many different bullets coming towards him. And he's basically having to deal with bullets shooting at him as if his shield is like a sheet or something. It's just going straight through. He's got nothing to defend against. And I've seen people online today, and I wanted to bring it in, say, would Manchester United be in a better place if they'd kept Ole Gunnar Solskjaer? Would Manchester United be in a better place if they'd kept Erik ten Hag? This revisionism of previous managers. The fact of the matter is, we sacked Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, and the fact of the matter is, we sacked Erik ten Hag. We cannot go backwards. No matter how much Amorim isn't reaching the expectations as we thought he would, this earlier on into his Manchester United career. It doesn't mean he won't in the future. This early on, he is not reaching the expectations that we thought. It doesn't matter how much Amorim is failing in the eyes of the fans or how much he isn't succeeding the way that we thought he would. That doesn't make Erik ten Hag's tenure successful, as much as I was an Erik ten Hag fan. It doesn't make Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's tenure successful. Both of their managers were sacked for a reason, because they weren't delivering the results and they were given a sustained period of time and they were given investment, they were given money in the transfer windows to make their team, and it didn't get to the level of success that was required for Manchester United. Ruben Amorim's been given a left wing back. That's all he's been given. He's not been given time, he's not been given money. All he's been given is the worst performing Manchester United squad in history. And people want to already sack him a few months into his tenure without giving him even a summer to try and rebuild, without even giving him a pre-season. Like, it is crazy to me that people want to go for the manager straight away. That's what we choose to go for. When we've had years of mismanagement in this football club, years of money wasted, years of bad decisions, and we're left with a squad that is in absolute tatters. And how do you fix that? oh, we just get rid of the manager and bring a new manager in. Who do you bring in? Because you've brought in, a manager that had proven league titles in the Portuguese league and had beat, proven top managers like Pep Guardiola in the Champions League, in Ruben Amorim. You brought in Erik ten Hag, who had a very good record at Ajax, won league titles, was successful in the Champions League, beat Real Madrid 4-1 in the Champions League with Ajax. And that failed. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, the legend, the ex-player, that didn't go according to plan. Jose Mourinho probably should have been given more time and more investment and more backing, to be honest with you. But one of the most successful managers of our generation, that didn't work out. So when do you stop going for the manager? And it really, I can't wrap my head around it that people already want a change of manager at this point, a few months in, and that's where we're deciding to put the blame. Of course you can criticise, of course you can be not happy with the way things have gone, but to actually believe that it's Amorim that is the reason why Manchester United are currently failing, it's just not the case. And Manchester United have fundamentals that they need to change. I mean, Lee Payne has said it's the club that's failed the manager. Amorim came in mid-season and is expected to work miracles with the same squad that throws every manager under the bus the moment it gets tough. I don't believe in this squad continues to throw manager after manager after manager under the bus. I don't believe in that because it's a different squad now from when Jose Mourinho was here, and that's how long we've been saying it for. It is a different squad. There's still a couple of players, but the squad has changed over the years. It's the culture at Manchester United. It is the culture. The culture at Manchester United is toxic. That is what is killing us over and over and over again, and it needs clearing from top to bottom. It needs top to bottom. It needs an exorcism at Manchester United. It genuinely does. I mean, I saw something online today, and I wanted to bring Ole Gunnar Solskjaer into this here because Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is doing very, very well with Besiktas in Turkey, and this obviously, when Ruben Amorim is doing pretty poorly at Manchester United, people are saying, would you take Ole Gunnar Solskjaer back? Were Manchester United too quick to sack Ole Gunnar Solskjaer? If David De Gea would have just scored that penalty in the Europa League final, he'd still be here and they'd be super successful. And people have short-term memories and they tend to remember the good and not the bad. Like, look, I love Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, right? But people talking about the fact that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is smashing it in Turkey. Erik ten Hag smashed it in the Dutch league. Ruben Amorim was smashing it in the Portuguese league. Erik ten Hag, people were talking about him as the Pep successor. They were talking about Ruben Amorim as the Pep successor. And they both have failed. Well, Amorim's failing at United and Ten Hag has failed at Manchester United because ultimately he wanted to succeed and win Premier League and Champions League. He won an FA Cup, he won a Carabao Cup, fair play to him. But in terms of his overall stint at Manchester United, he didn't reach the heights that we would expect. Ruben Amorim is obviously nowhere near it right now. You would categorise him as failing. So Turkey isn't in the top 5 leagues, and neither's the Portuguese league, neither's the Dutch league. But Erik ten Hag and Ruben Amorim both have league titles from them leagues. Ole spent money. Ole was backed. Like, Amorim has been given a left wing back and that is it. And also, both their managers walked into better squads than what Amorim's walked into. Ole's squad was better than Ten Hag's squad, and Ten Hag's squad was better than Amorim's squad. We just keep getting worse year after year after year. So this Ole Gunnar Solskjaer revisionism doesn't sit right with me. The Ten Hag revisionism also doesn't, as much as I think we sat Ten Hag at the wrong point. There was things that he did that they were unforgivable looking towards the future. The Ahmad one was a massive one for me. Look, Ole was good at getting the best out of what he had and bringing a feel-good factor back to Manchester United, but we were with his vision and his long-term plan, we were never going to be able to compete sustainably at the top with Manchester City and with Liverpool for titles. And that is what we're aiming for. We're absolutely nowhere near it now, but you would like to think that with Amorim's system, his style of playing, his vision, eventually, with the massive squad overhaul and the time he has with the squad, he can get us playing a style of football where you can be at the top of English football and be competing in Europe with a style of football that's going to go head-to-head with the best. We could never really go head-to-head with the best over a sustained period of time. We could beat City in a one-off game, we could beat Liverpool in a one-off game with the likes of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's style of play, but it was never sustainable for us to be at the top for the future. So people have short-term memories, people always look backwards, but we need to be looking forwards and we need to be moving forward with our manager and do our best to to help him achieve what he was brought in to do, which is play a style of football that is going to progress us and have us competing with the top of the league. We can't do that currently. We're in 14th. We're nowhere near off it. Fulham are better than us, Bournemouth are better than us, Brighton are better than us. There's so many teams that you should never even say in the same sentence are better than Manchester United that are currently better than us. Crystal Palace. There's so many teams that are better than us, but you have to hope for the future, and you've got to do. This club has got to do what is right to help Amorim the best they can. I've seen people out there saying, oh, you know, Ollie would never play with a back five against Southampton, against Fulham at home. You know, we should never be playing a back five at Old Trafford against these sort of oppositions. You know, you can't be cowardly, you've got to go for it. And I understand that point. When I see us with a flat back five at Old Trafford, I don't like it, and I would criticise it. But do you think Ruben Amorim wants to play with a flat back five? Do you think he wants to do that? Do you think he wants to? His system is 3 centre-backs and 2 wing-backs that are bombing forward and being part of the attack. He doesn't have anybody in his armour. The only right wing-back he currently has is Diogo Dalot. That is it. Ahmad's injured and we don't have anybody else. Mazraoui's having to play there, but realistically he's a centre-back. He's only been allowed to bring Patrick Dorgu in. That's his left wing-back, fair play, and he's actually looked like probably one of our best attacking prospects in the games that he has played. So you've got to allow him that time. This isn't the way he wants to play. If you've studied Ruben Amorim at Sporting Lisbon, he doesn't want to play with a flat back five. He wants to play with the wing-backs bombing on. He wants to play an attacking style of football. He wants to see us higher up the pitch. He's criticised us for being more comfortable in a low block, being more comfortable when we're sitting back, which is why when people say, you know, how could we compete with Arsenal at the Emirates? You know, why were we good in that game? Why did we look good against Ipswich when we went down to 10 men? Because you're sitting back in a low block, and that's where this squad thrives. He wants to progress us. He just doesn't have the players to do it. And, you know, it's... I could go on about this all day, but it's when people say, you know, he should be getting better out of the players. He probably should be. But there's a limit that you reach. There is a limit that you reach. It's like saying you should be able to, you know, paint a world-class painting with sticks and mud as your equipment to do so. Like there's a ceiling of where we're at. I mean, Aidan Heaven hadn't even played a professional minute for Arsenal, yet we're probably going to have to start relying on him soon. And he had his debut yesterday. Fair play, he did well. Chido Obi, you know, he was nowhere near the first team at Arsenal, and they don't even have a striker. Yet he is now being relied upon as our goal-scoring solution, and I hope he really does well. But United, the squad is thin. You know, the amount of quality we have in our squad is low. So you have players coming in from the academy, which is doing really well. That probably should be starting, but that's because of the lack of quality we actually do have in our first team, which is what Amorim is having to deal with. Simply Red says, genuine, where would we be in the Premier League under Rude? Well, how's Rude doing at Leicester? I love Rude and I really want him to be successful, but how is he doing at Leicester? Every time I check the Leicester result, he's losing. So yeah, okay, he did decently in his games of his interim, and that was probably our best, you know, result/performances across the whole season with Ten Hag and Amorim. But Rude wasn't the answer either. Maybe if the club did want, you know, well, if the club did want Amorim and they do see Amorim as the long-term successor, which they obviously did, which is why they've brought him in, if they wanted to not write off this, well, actually, you still would be writing off the season. If they wanted to give Amorim that fresh start in the summer, you could have kept Rude as interim till the end of the season. But then it always drags in the questions is, what if Rude gets that bounce that Ollie did because of the feel-good factor, because of the arm around the shoulder, and then he stays permanently, and then you're in a situation where people are calling for him to say permanently, do Ineos back down to fan pressure again. It would have opened a whole other can of worms if you would have kept Ruud van Nistelrooy. He was more like a mate of the players. Like, think about how, you know, the players all spoke super highly of Ruud. The manager needs to be the manager, in my opinion. Pauline Vernon says, it's the throwaway nature of today's society, I'm afraid. Thank you, everyone, for getting your comments in and getting your super chats in. And I talk about people saying, you know, how are we ever going to score goals when Amorim's playing a back five? We can't be playing a back five. His Sporting team had no trouble scoring goals. No trouble whatsoever. they were very successful at scoring goals, and people can say it's a Portuguese league. He did it in the Champions League. Look at what Ruben Amorim has to work with. So Ruben Amorim has come out and he said this on Chido Obi and on Aiden Heaven. He said Aiden Heaven and Chido Obi both have to improve a lot, but they're ready to play for Manchester United. They have to be prepared. It is our tradition to put young players in the first team. Now, if we actually had a team of, and I'm not even talking about a Man United team of the expectation of quality where we'd be in the top four. I'm not even talking about that. If we even had a squad that was good enough to be in the top half of the table, you might not have seen Chido Obi and you might not have seen Aiden Heaven. Like, I look across our competitors, and let me just get up the Premier League table right now. And I'm looking across our competitors, and this is in the bottom half of the table. You know, I'm looking at it. Everton, Beto's killing it for them. Chido Obi wouldn't be getting minutes over Beto right now. You look at, you know, Crystal Palace, Mateta's doing a great job. Brentford, Wissa, you know, there's Ipswich, Liam Delap, Wolves, you know, they've got multiple attacking players that can contribute. He might have got minutes, but he wouldn't have had to been relied upon. And don't get me wrong, I think Chido Obi looks super talented, and I'm so excited for him in his future. And I thought he did such a good job when he came on yesterday. His movement was great, creating chances for himself. I thought he really showed Rasmus Højlund up in terms of his movement and what a striker should be doing to be that penalty box, getting your chances and sniffing them out. And he did that really well. But Man United fans are now hoping Chido Obi is going to be our goal-scoring solution until the end of the season. He's 17. He's been thrust into the limelight so quickly because we don't have anybody else. And I hope he does well. I hope he takes it in his stride. But most other clubs, he would be nurtured in slowly, without this giant pressure on his shoulders. And this is where Manchester United are at, where we're having to rely upon a 17-year-old in the academy. And yes, like Ruben Amorim said, he's ready to play for Manchester United. And I'm excited to see him, and I want to see him start next game because I think he's probably the best striker option we have. But the fact that we've actually got to resort to him shows where Manchester United are at in terms of the quality of their squad. I mean, you look at this. There is 0 goals in the last 21 games for Alejandro Garnacho and 0 goals in the last 18 games for Rasmus Højlund. And I sit here on the United stand weekly, and whenever I criticise Garnacho, I have people going in on me, saying Beth's got a Garnacho agenda. You know, why does Beth want to sell Garnacho? You know, he's the only winger we've got, etc., etc. And I've not outwardly sat here and said, sell Garnacho, sell Garnacho. What I've sat here and said is, I don't think he's good enough to be starting for a Manchester United team that should be competing right now, and I don't see him as a starter in an Amorim system that is successful. That's what I've said. That is what I've said on him. And I'll say the same thing about Rasmus Højlund. They shouldn't be starters for a successful Amorim team in this system. They just shouldn't be. And you get rinsed from the fan base. And I feel like, not all of them, but I feel like so many people overhype our players and expect more than what they're capable of. But I'm not blaming Garnacho for our goal-scoring issues. I'm not blaming Rasmus Højlund for our goal-scoring issues. They have been thrust into the limelight too quickly as well. The pressure has been piled on them unfairly. I mean, you look at the pathways at other teams and you look at how they get nurtured into the team. They have more experienced players around them to help them. And we've just not got that. Rasmus Højlund shouldn't be starting, Garnacho shouldn't be starting, but they're having to start because we've got nobody else. Rasmus Højlund's 22, Alejandro Garnacho's 20. Bruno is the only bit of quality in front of goal we currently have in the squad because Ahmad's injured. The only bit of quality we have, and he's having to play next to Ugarte. Joshua Zirkzee, he's got good link-up play, he looks like a good footballer, but he's not exactly, you know, a massive goal threat, is he either? So no wonder we're struggling to score goals. And you look at what the pathway should have been for Rasmus Højlund. You look at what the pathway should have been for Alejandro Garnacho. And this is where you've got to blame the club. You have to blame the club. Rasmus Højlund should have been coming in under an experienced striker, could have had the opportunity to go out on loan that should have been afforded of him because we shouldn't have paid the amount we did, and we should have been bringing him in as a young player alongside an experienced striker that was going to show him the ropes. Instead, he's been given the number 9 shirt and it's all the pressure's on him every single game, and he's not delivering. He wasn't ready. And it was the club's job to identify that. Fans get carried away, fans get excited, fans love young players, new toys that are coming in. It is not our jobs to foresee this in the future. It's the club's job to build an environment around players that gives them the best chance of success, and we haven't done it with Højlund. With Alejandro Garnacho, what should have happened with him? He should have continued to be that super sub, coming off the bench, be nurtured into the team. He should have had a senior above him. Some people would argue that that was Marcus Rashford, and maybe Marcus Rashford didn't live up to being that senior player that was supposed to guide Alejandro Garnacho, which he should have been at that age and being at the club for a long time. But who was Rashford's senior player above him? Who was Rashford looking up to? Like, we have, along the way, created an environment that doesn't help young players. It doesn't breed success, because young players come in, they get given the world, and then all the expectation goes on them, and it's like they're going to be successful. And then when they have a bad spell of form, when it isn't looking like they're able to perform consistently, starting on a regular basis, everyone's like, oh my gosh, like they're not good enough, they're rubbish. And then they're getting all of this criticism piled on them at a young age, and they've got nobody around them to help. You've got to have the experienced players, the foundations of the quality players. And then the young players come through, you nurture them in, and you have a pathway for them. Sometimes they'll be good enough, like an Ahmad. He's gone out on loan a couple of times, he's come back, he's fought his way into the team, he's good enough. Sometimes they won't be good enough, and they'll get sold, and they'll go elsewhere, and they'll do well at a different team. But you can't just rely on players because they show a little bit of something and the fan base gets excited around them. You've got to show it on a consistent basis. And the standards at these football clubs has slipped. And now we're in a situation where we're relying on 20-year-old Garnacho, 22-year-old Rasmus Højlund for goals. And Garnacho's not scored or assisted in a Premier League game since November, and he's not scored a goal in 21 games. Højlund's not scored in 18. Like, yes, they are a problem, but the club is the problem for not taking them on a journey and not building them up and not giving him the right pathway at this football club. Look at Phil Foden, how he was nurtured into that City team. Like the little pressure that was on him because he came into a functioning team, a good environment. And not every single team is going to work in the same way, and not everything can always be perfect for a player coming in. But you've got to create the right environment around young players, and you've got to do your due diligence. And Manchester United have just not done that. Have just not done it. And I'm looking at Rasmus Højlund's goal scoring record. People talk about his Europa League record and his record in Europe. His Europa League record is 2 goals against Bodo Glimt and 2 goals against FCSB. It's not exactly groundbreaking, is it? Like, these are the levels that we're seeing, and you wonder why Amorim can't get more out of this squad. And people are saying, we're not scoring goals in this team because Amorim's playing a back 5. No, it's because we don't have quality in our squad. The only person with a bit of quality left in our squad now, Ahmad is injured, and Mainu is injured in front of goal, is Bruno, and that's it. And he's playing centre-back half the time because we need someone, he needs to do everything. So this is the situation. The quality of the players aren't good enough, and I think, yes, you can criticise Amorim, and he's not made the best decisions over the course of his United career all of the time. He's made some good decisions, but he's made a lot of decisions that potentially in hindsight were wrong. But he is a manager that has been thrust into a diabolical Manchester United side, and he's trying to just keep his head above water right now. The quality isn't there, and people expect you to make, turn water into wine, and it's just not going to happen. You've got to at least give him a pre-season and a transfer window. But yeah, that's what I wanted to kind of talk about on Ruben Amorim. And I know I've been talking for a while here, but it is super frustrating when it feels like it's just the same record on repeat. Manager comes in, and as soon as there's any sign of like sort of weakness or we're not getting the results, immediately it goes, what can the next manager do? And we're always picking flaws in people. Eric Ten Hag ditched his philosophy to try and accommodate the players. He shouldn't be doing it. Ruben Amorim is sticking to his philosophy and not accommodating to the players. He needs to accommodate to the players. There's always something. The fact of the matter is the fundamentals at that football club need to change from top to bottom. And the manager, I think right now, is the last area that we need to address. Everything else needs to be addressed. We brought him in for a reason, give him the summer and let him do his job. Class of 99 says, what Premier League clubs does Højlund start for? I mean, we've done this. Does he start for a single Prem club? Does he start for a single Prem club? Potentially Southampton, probably Southampton, and Leicester, arguably. But Jamie Vardy, still at his age, to be fair, like, Daka's pretty decent as well. Like, what Premier League clubs... Actually, he probably starts for Arsenal right now, because Arsenal don't have a striker. That's about it. Ian Tracy says the squad is beyond thin, Beth. It is anorexic at this point. Well, the squad is very thin, of course. And last little bit I wanted to bring into the show as well to round it off. And please get your comments in. I really do appreciate all of you getting involved in the chat as well. Alpha Gaming says Højlund shouldn't even be in the team. A brilliant example of overpaying for raw potential. Gavin says he starts for a few more than that, to be honest. Who does he start for? Please let me know who he starts for. Let me know what you think. And Matthew Gartel says crazy going from 16 goals in his debut season to this. And this is the thing, how many players regress in Manchester United as well. And even though Højlund is getting so much stick, and Chido Obi did show him up with his movement and the way he got his opportunities. I mean, 3 big chances in 52 minutes and Højlund's had 3 big chances in 22 games is a wild stat. If I was Højlund, I'd be sat there thinking, wow, okay, I need to do more. I need to put my ideas up a bit. As much as he is getting criticism and he deserves a lot of criticism, there was a player there when we bought him. Like, I know from people in Italy that there was a lot of hype around him when we bought him from Italy. Like, people were very excited about Rasmus Højlund. Very excited. There is a player in there. But again, it's another example of a young player coming in. Yes, we've overpaid, but we've not nurtured him or helped him grow in the slightest. If anything, he's gone backwards. And he's another player, I guarantee you, if he went somewhere else, he'd do better than what he's doing now. And why is that with every player that comes in? But that being said, you still got to do the mirror test, and he still was overpaid for, and an experienced striker still should have come in as well. And I still think Chido Obi needs to be getting minutes over him at this current moment in time, just based off yesterday's performance alone. But I wanted to bring in this from yesterday as well. Manchester United were heavily linked to Sander Berge, right? Do you remember this? Heavily linked to Sander Berge. If you don't remember, he was the player that ran the midfield at Old Trafford yesterday. Not a United player, a Fulham player. Ran the midfield at Old Trafford. He was the best player on the pitch yesterday, and he's doing really well for Fulham. We were linked to him when he was at Burnley. We were linked to him when he was at Sheffield United. And a lot of people kind of turned their nose up at it because he played for Sheffield United, because he played for Burnley. And this is something I wanted to bring to the show, and I was discussing it with a few people that we have on the forum, Tull, Ricky, and we tend to turn our noses up at players who play for the so-called lesser clubs. We're Manchester United, why are we going for them players that play for them clubs? A lot of them clubs are now better than us. And we are one of them clubs because we're towards the bottom of the table. There are players that play for lesser teams, as you would say, that we can go and get for a cheaper price. There are. And people need to stop being so picky just because of the club that they come from. I mean, I'm looking towards the bottom of the Premier League table right now. You've got Mateta, Cunha, Delap, Amari Hutchinson, Tyler Diblin. Whether they fit into Amorim's system or not, you can debate that. These are all players in and around the relegation zone that Manchester United that would all improve our current starting 11. And I get it, we need to aim high and we need to make sure we're recruiting well and players in that are going to take us up to the next level. But all of them players definitely take us up to the next level. And yes, there probably is better options out there. Yes, there is, the dream targets, but Manchester United need to be real about where we are. We are 14th in the Premier League. We are, like Wayne Rooney said, we are not an attractive prospect right now, and we are not blessed with a lot of money. My dream is Osimhen in the summer. United are already sort of shutting that down through certain news that's coming out in terms of he's too expensive for a player of that age, even though he's literally the perfect striker for what we need and going into his prime. We need to get realistic, and there is players in and around towards the bottom half of the Premier League table that Manchester United could pick up that would drastically improve our team that we've got to think about. But make sure you hit the like button, everyone, and get your comments in. Last but not least, I just need to bring this in from someone's telling me there's WhatsApp coming in as well. Right, let me have a look at this. While I am just looking at the latest news that is coming in, let's head over to Sam and Maud's at Old Trafford, because they've got a little bit to say on Ruben Amorim and this team as well. And let me know your opinions on what they have to say from Old Trafford. Let's head over to Sam and Maud's now.
Okay, we are outside Old Trafford where Manchester United got knocked out the FA Cup to Fulham on penalties last night. Moors, if they didn't watch the fan forum, if the chat didn't watch the fan forum, just quickly sum up your thoughts on the game, and then I've got one more burning fan-based question to ask you after.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think most people are obviously disappointed. I mean, this season was kind of turning into a cup season, you know, because the league was pretty much all and done a while ago. So we were kind of basing it on how well we're doing the FA Cup, how we're doing the Europa League, and now that we're out of the FA Cup, it is a bit of a burner, because it is our only real options to get into Europe, you know. And next season, as a United fan, you want to be in Europe. Even if it is a Europa League or the Champions League, you want to be in Europe. So yeah, it was very disappointing. And speaking to fans as well, you know, I feel like the consensus is the same. Now, in terms of the actual game, there were some positive to take from it, but I feel like it's every game there is a positive, and then the next game that positive gets taken away. You know, it's like we do something good, and then the next game it's like, oh, everything's just been reversed. So it's very disappointing, but hopefully this week on Thursday we can get a win at Real Sociedad and, you know, go through into the further stages in the Europa League.
Yeah, exactly. So Goldbridge touched this morning on the fact that some of the fan base were blaming yesterday's result on Ruben Amorim. Ruben Amorim has said that he is going to stick to his formation. It's his way or the highway in Ruben Amorim's eyes. What do you think about Ruben Amorim? Because that is what some fans are asking. It's not necessarily what I think. I think we should back Ruben Amorim, give him the players he needs. But what do you think?
I think we should 100% back him. I mean, one thing that I don't like about the United fan base is we seem to make the same mistake over and over and over again. You know, we've had multiple managers come in, and the start of their tenure might look good, but then eventually you see the effects of having a poorly run club. The effects of that on a manager. We saw it with Ten Hag, we saw it with Oli, we saw it with Jose, we saw it with Van Gaal. We've seen it multiple times. Now with Amorim, yes, we need to back him. However, one thing I will say is I do feel like Amorim is slightly to blame for some of his decisions, you know, and some of it could be his man management, his in-game management. He's not perfect. I think we can all admit that.
Yeah,
Amorim,
no one's perfect.
He's not perfect, and it's okay to criticise a manager on some of the decisions that he's made, as long as it's not like abuse or whatever, and it's not unnecessary. It's okay to criticise a manager. However, like I said at the start, I do feel like he should 100% be backed. And I feel like the fan base needs to also back him as well. Not just from Ineos. The fan base needs to get behind him. Because at the end of the day, if it's not Amorim, who is it?
Yeah,
it's gonna be Southgate or Graham Souness. Graham Parr. It's gonna be one of those guys. So look, unless we want it to be one of those guys, let's back what we already have and treat him like he is, you know, a part of the United, I guess, community, United family. So yeah, I'm still behind him 100%.
This is a live show. Beth is in the studio. Tell us what you think in the live comments. Me and Maud are coming back upstairs to watch the end of Beth's show. See you in a minute.
Nice to have Sam and Maud's opinion from Old Trafford, something a little bit different. So shout out to Sam and Maud in the chat. I couldn't agree more with what they were saying. It's like we're on the same wavelength. You know, what is the alternate to Amorim, and how do you actually, how much better do you expect another manager to do? I know Ruben Amorim is doing pretty poorly right now, but I'm pretty sure you could bring any manager into this squad, and in the long term, it wouldn't succeed without mass changes. And that is what Ruben Amorim is trying to implement. Just quickly before we round off the show, there is just a couple more things coming in, some breaking news, so I'll bring it in. It's coming from Matt Hughes Media, and it's just some more cost-cutting things really, and I'll bring it into the show because we are a news show. And it's coming in that Sir Jim Ratcliffe has decided the vast majority of Manchester United staff should be based in Manchester, and that the club's current 23,000 square foot London office is deemed too large and too expensive. Manchester United are exploring an early termination from a 10-year lease agreement at their London offices in Kensington in the latest cost-cutting measure proposed by Sir Jim Ratcliffe. Very interesting, and to be fair, like, if that office isn't being utilised to its maximum capacity, I understand, why that might be an area where they might be looking to cut down, but I find it very, very interesting that we're being told, our ticket prices are going up because, it shouldn't be more expensive to go to a Fulham game than a Manchester United game. But so we're having to live in Manchester by a really expensive part of London's pricing. Yet you don't want to pay. The reason you're shutting down the London offices is, let's be honest, because it's expensive, because it's in London, and that's why the majority of the staff should be based in Manchester. I'm assuming it's basically because it's cheaper. So it kind of works both ways on that front, but it's not surprising that more cost cutting is happening. I mean, when you getting rid of the lunches, and there's so many cost cutting measures that are so minuscule. You can't even believe it. Of course, you're going to be looking at shutting down a huge London office that will definitely be expensive on the pockets of the ownership. But more cost cutting, what do you think about that? Hit a like on the video, get your thoughts down below about Ruben Amorim and the future of this club and what the ownership need to do. Thank you for watching, everyone. I really do appreciate all of your chats in the comments. I appreciate it a lot. Stay positive. It's a new week. We have Real Sociedad on Thursday. I'm hoping and praying we manage to get a decent result away from home, but I think it's hopes and prayers that we're going to need for that one. Thank you for watching, everyone. I will see you on the next one.